So, yeah. Well, again, thanks for everybody being here. We're going to start with 2 items that we needed to get approval from the board, and those were the minutes or the notes of April 3rd and April 10th. And they're pretty long notes, and I've read them, and you forget what we voted on and how many Lucas we passed. If you get April 10th and April 10th, 3 and 10, you'll find out a lot more about it. So that was good for me to remind myself. So do I have a motion to approve the April 3rd and April 10th notes? Any second? Thanks, Steve. All right, and then the agenda. I think everybody has seen the agenda.
Wait, we have to vote.
Oh, wait. Okay. Sorry. Rushing on. All right, how many votes do we have? Anybody that wants to say yes, just say yes. And anybody that doesn't want to approve the minutes, say no.
Yeah.
I mean, it's usually pretty. Okay, sorry, folks. So, yeah, with agenda, again, I'd like the board to look at the agenda. And if you have any comments or changes, suggestions, let us know now. If there are none, again, we're going to accept the agenda as distributed.
I motion to accept the agenda.
Okay, second. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And no's. Well, so that's really my beginning, and I think Eric, do you want to introduce what we're doing tonight?
Yeah, so, we'll go next. So tonight, the bulk of the meeting is going to be the strategy discussion. We, as you all know, and as the members of the public know, we had the online questionnaire available last month. And we have some results, and of those results, there were a handful of strategies that had 50% or greater disagree with the strategies. We can talk more about that in a minute, but we just wanted to bring that up to you all, for you all to be aware, and for you all to have an opportunity to discuss that again if you want. Additionally, based on SAC comment and comment from members of the public, there are some potentially new recommendations for strategies. And we sent that to you guys a couple weeks ago. As well as this long in front of you now, in case you didn't bring a copy. I know it's a lot. So tonight's meeting, we're really trying to stay on track as much as possible, because there's a lot to get through. And then finally, if time permits, we're going to try to get you guys' feet wet a little bit with some zoning applications. Right now, between regions 2, 4, and 7, the application process is open, but region 4 by far is getting the most amount of applications. We have over 20. Well, I think the other 2 regions only have a combined of about 5. So we need to make sure we're all comfortable with the process and kind of be here tonight to answer any questions. I understand we as staff have not seen you guys anything related to the zoning applications yet. We will do so in the coming weeks, especially once the application period closes. Because the next meeting on June 12th, that's going to be the meeting. We're going to discuss that process, and we can talk a little bit more about that later after the strategy discussion, but just wanted to let that for you guys now. So without that, is there any questions so far or anything? Okay, so the strategy. If you look in front of you, the one document that's the single page 8.5 by 11, it's got on the very far left, it's got A through D. Those are the ones, these strategies are the ones that do not, that had public disagree, or had a majority disagree, 50% or greater disagree. One thing I want to remind the SAC is that these strategies were already approved by you through a consensus of at least 67%. So at least 2/3 of you all voted in favor of these to move forward with. And another thing too to keep in mind is that you guys have been through this process from day one. You guys have seen and heard discussions, have been part of discussions, have seen presentations, and have really been able to have a little bit better, potentially have a better understanding than some of the members of the public who may have responded to this survey. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. Finally, I would like to point out all these strategies that the public disagree with, at least from 50% or greater, are on the housing category. And in that questionnaire, there were 125 responses. A majority, 40% of the responses were 65 and older, 72% were white adults, 76% were not Hispanic or Latino, 52% were female, and 83% own their own home. Those are just the demographics. You can see that online as well. That's the hub site. I just wanted to reiterate that fact as we get ready to potentially discuss the recommendation. So one thing, given that.
No, I'll wait until you're finished.
No, go ahead.
Before you go on. Yeah, so two things. First is that you just did a great job going over the demographics. What I saw, you did a great job showing, it started off with about 170 participants on the first of the 5 sections, went down to 70 some, I think, in the last set. So it wasn't an even number throughout all of the respondents on each of the 5 sections. Second thing to go along with that is you did a great job on the demographics that you just summarized there. But didn't we give our social, not social security numbers, but our zip codes when we registered online there, saying which areas that we were from?
Correct.
So it'd be nice, for me anyway, to know how that broke out.
Sure.
You know, how many people we had from Gibson Island, Pasadena, Severna Park, and so. And then finally, I'm a poli-sci major, but I counted 32 different strategies that got 50% or less agreement. So, did I misinterpret that?
So the ones presented to you tonight is 50% more this. If you
One thing that we found was because our categories were agree, neutral, disagree. And one thing that we found was, like we said earlier, you guys are kind of like mini experts in this now. You had the presentations from the departments when we went over the strategies, we discussed them with you. And so you guys were really able to form an agree or disagree. And a lot of people from the public would comment and say, I'm not really sure what this is about, so I'm gonna say neutral. So for some of them, if you were to look at the breakdowns on the summary, you'd see that they had pretty high neutrals, simply because people just didn't really understand the planaries didn't get translated the best, you know? And so we decided to look at the percent disagree as like the threshold for discussing them with you guys, as opposed to the percent agree and neutral, you know?
I could look at it a different way. I could say those people that responded may have had a better understanding of it than some of those others that did not. Because clearly, when you're talking TIF, or you're talking about comparing programs in Montgomery County, you know, as examples we might follow, people aren't going to do that research. But there may have been some in there that did know what they were responding to. And that's why I think just simply disregarding that middle group that said, you know, no response, basically, no opinion. I think you have to go with the number of people who actually said they did not agree.
And that's what you did, isn't that
So
what you
that's why we're looking at, if you look at the 3 breakdowns, it'll take me a second, but I can get it for us. If you look at the breakdown on the document that's shared online. Oh, it's not gonna let me do it, sorry. I don't have the right tool up right now, but if you look at the one that's online, it walks you through for each strategy. Agree, 30%, neutral, 20%, disagree, that last 50%. And so that's what we're looking at, is that disagree, the last 50%. Like people who strongly said, I disagree. That's what we're looking at tonight.
So given that information, that we're looking at the ones that had strong disagree. And also keeping in mind that the SAC as a whole already approved these and provided their support behind them to move forward with. Are there any that you all wish to discuss as a group tonight? If there are, what I would recommend, and if this is okay with you, is if, say, I wanted to pull out number 3, the group as a whole has to agree to talk about number 3, simply because the SAC had already approved it. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And we have a lot to go through tonight. We have about 21 new strategies that the SAC and members of the public have commented to potentially create. But there's opportunity for everybody to discuss these as well.
Okay, what if we change our mind? What would that mean to the process? If we just said, oh, yeah, we want to change our mind, is that even something we could do or want to do?
So that's up to the SAC. If this may be an opportunity where the SAC and staff disagree again. So if you guys decide just randomly get rid of A, staff may feel strongly for A, so the plan would move SAC decided against A, but the staff still recommends for A.
So the recommendation will still be, if we change it, still have that in the plan. I mean, we'll still be quoted on that.
Correct.
But if we don't change anything, it'll just.
Let's move forward and do it.
Well, I know I saw density twice, and I think density is not a good word. People, so-
No.
There's about 4 or 5 bad
Density.
words
Before-
that really set things off, so.
Does anybody have one that they'd like to recommend that we all look at? Emma?
D, because it had the highest percentage of disagreement.
Do we have any, but because everything else was just above 50%. And because we beat these up a little bit ago. And because, I mean, the total number of respondents, when you look at the total number of people in the region. For total response is really pretty small. I guess what I would say is I feel like. The ones that are under or just over 50%. I don't think we should talk about it. We've been through it. The one that's at 64%, we certainly should.
Would somebody like to go with D, talk about D?
Just that,
If I may, just a group of agree.
Oh, okay, yep,
Yes.
yeah, I think
yeah, sorry, just that, from the public's comments that I got, a lot of them were just expressing their, especially to do with the school and the school capacity part, they were just, the concern I saw the biggest there was, I highlighted one that's, someone said school capacity is too important to play games with. And so I think I just would like to have more discussion on this as a group to see if there's something that we can do to, assuage those fears, or if there's something we need to take out or whatever.
On that note, if I may, just, this was one that the SAC did have a good conversation on. And at the very beginning, you can see the study the feasibility of X, Y, and Z. That was, that phrase took a while to get in here, and that's was the phrase that kind of pushed the SAC over to the agreement. Because this doesn't commit anything, it's just committing to studying this strategy further. So just, I want to keep that in mind, so whoever.
One of the things when I was reading this one, and if I wasn't in the process, I don't know if I necessarily would have understood it myself. But the very first one says allow affordable housing projects to invest for school capacity earlier than it's scheduled in front. I don't think people understand what that means. And maybe, the whole idea is, let's look at where the school is going and how it affect the school system before we even move further with the process. And I don't know if when people were reading this, if that really conveyed through this, I would not have picked that up. So I'm wondering if it's just people not understanding what we wrote in here.
Well, and on that note too, if I may, Michael isn't here tonight, but he did send an email just before the meeting, and he had comments. I'm gonna read an email that Ann and I both received. It says, my general comment is that while the majority of the survey respondents were not in favor of the issues we are going to be discussing today, we should be mindful that we need some of these strategies to accomplish the Plan 2040 goals that they are attached to. I want to recommend eliminating a strategy, i.e. related to affordable housing, based on a survey with the majority of respondents being homeowners and high earners. I also think part of the reason for this objection, some of the strategies may be the wording and lack of understanding of certain topics. The SAC had the benefit from hearing from experts. I think that came up with some good strategies. We may just need to tweak the wording on some of the strategies going forward.
I'd just like to say that when we were doing this, we had explore, we used a lot, develop. We saw some of these, at least I did, as like a huge task, to really examine all these things and do a study. And I think that makes me more comfortable saying explore and, some of them, because I don't know how many strategies people can take on, but pretty complex. So we definitely, if anybody want to change D, because remember, it's a feasibility of the county code changes. And I do think there's bias about more affordable housing, just that name, the bias.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too when I was reading through in general, everything. I think people have different understanding of what affordable housing means.
And we couple that with schools, there's no,
And density,
I mean, if we were trying to design one to get a whole lot of objections. Yeah, density, schools, affordable, might as well throw transit in there.
So is there a motion or excuse me?
Well, normally, and we have before, paid attention to inputs we got from the public. And every one of these meetings, we've had people that have shown up, and in most cases, there's been inputs from the public in those meetings. We spent an extraordinary amount of time on this, not because we got good briefings necessarily from all the people that came, and presented from all the different directorates, but because we used the opportunity in the discussion period to make sure that everybody understood exactly what each one of these strategies said. And many of them frankly did in fact come from the staff. They did not originate from us, and many we did not even hear in the presentations. I mean, that's the honest part. But we did bring these out and make sure that we all understood them before we voted on them. I absolutely do not see any reason at this point to go back and revisit any of these.
I agree.
is that a motion?
That is the motion is
Some?
not to go back and to revisit revisit any one of these strategies.
Is that-
except the bonus.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
All in favor of leaving this the way it is? Say yes,
Yes.
or raise your hand, either one. Yep. All those opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, there's an abstention.
Two
And two
abstentions.
abstentions. We have two abstentions.
So it's,
82.
okay, thank you. That makes it easy. 8 and 2, I think we're good to.
Well, all right, great. So then,
Wait a second, we have a name up there. Bo said that.
well, are you able to speak?
Wait a minute.
I'm gonna make sure the volume's-
I can, yeah, I can speak.
Perfect, we
I
can
think-
hear you. Yeah. So Bo is a nay, 2 abstentions, and then the rest 8.
Do we have Bo counted
I
in our?
didn't know, I didn't know Bill was
Okay,
online.
let's do a count.
I can do fast math. So Bo's online, Michael's online, so that's 10, 12. And then we have 8 at the table who said yes, 2 abstentions, 1 nay. I'm not sure how much attention Michael is paying just because I haven't heard from him, so. But it still passes.
He's chiming in now.
Yeah, I would be a yes. I would just go back to the comment about rewording. So I agree, certainly not rehashing the strategies, but reviewing wording that makes it clear without changing the intent behind the strategies.
Well, and on that note too, there will be a draft presented where you guys will have a comment. So if you don't like the revision of the phrasing or whatever, feel free to comment and let us know. And there's again, multiple opportunities for this done. There's still a long way to go. So.
All right, shall I move ahead? Any
So-
questions before we do, Eric or Jessica, or anybody? Okay,
So,
Sorry, Michael, sorry, Bo, I didn't realize you guys were online.
well, this is 20, it says 22
yeah, so there are
suggestions. And has
22,
the staff has been over all of these?
these were comments that we have received from you all, as well as members of the public. And with this, so the first one you can see, potential new recommendation. This is comments we received from the SAC members, as well as members of the public. The next column you can see is there already an existing draft
Right,
strategy?
right.
If there is, we've listed it there. Third column is who is the prompt, SAC, remember the public. The next column is what's the staff recommendation? The staff could have recommended to either include, to revise an existing strategy, or not include. And then the final column is what we see, the justification of staff response. So there, again, there are 22. If you look if you look towards the end, about line 15 through 22. Other than the fact number 18 is new, those are all revisions to existing strategy.
15 and down.
15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21.
And the only changes from the strategy that the SAC had recommended or had come to a consensus on. And this new potential strategy is written in red, so you can see that in the red wording.
Okay.
So, we can either do this one of two ways. We can either, group those together now, if you guys would like, and kind of vote on that as a whole. Based on staff's recommendation, or if you want to pull out those one by one, you can do that as well. So these are technically new recommendations that the SAC can, they want.
How about if we just have a look at this for a few minutes?
Sure, and this was given to you all about 2 weeks ago.
But this is such a nice presentation. Because I tried copying.
Yeah, this is hard to read. So, I have a question on 1 and 2. They're just flipped.
So, so this one was, this one, all of it came from an SAC member. And
That would be me.
John, so I guess so I'm gonna follow John.
So
I'm
either
not
half
embarrassed.
is in or half is out. Okay.
So the 1 and 2 are the exact same thing, but staff, based on, we came up with 2 different recommendations for the same one. So the first one, as you can see, we crossed, the ones that crossed lines out.
Yeah.
We're not reflecting that in our recommendation, but those other ones, they kind of flip.
Yeah, it is.
The important thing here to me is, the big zoning issue is reducing the number of required parking spaces. Unfortunately, I read a book recently, and I've read some articles. And seeing how a number of cities around the United States have actually reduced parking spaces, finding that you really don't need that many parking spaces. And one of the things, when you think about it, this group has advocated, or the public, a lot of these strategies advocate the use of transit. I personally, I don't see that happening to any significant degree in Anne Arundel County, which is rural, or not rural / suburban area. But we are saying that with transit, you shouldn't have to have as many parking spaces. And especially if you're talking about affordable housing, and later on, there's another one about doing studies, but. The bottom line is, if we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about the use of transit, then we don't need all these parking spaces, and then it contributes to reducing congestion and reducing the cost of housing.
Well, and so I like your point that you were making with how the ingress and egress
Right.
can make things flow so much better, and the ones that remain, which are sort of concrete, more concrete than number 1. Number 1 is kind of more touchy feely, frankly. So I
Some of these
do
are
like
just-
those hard
They're
recommendations.
operating procedures. And when I look at some of these things that are proposed by me or by others, I can't discern a bright line between the difference between what is a strategy and what is like an operating procedure, because I think the line crossed in a few cases.
Because and I did see some coverage of those materials on the success of reducing the number of parking spaces, or having them meet. what's
Yeah.
realistic.
But the big issue in this, the zoning clearly is the
Yeah.
parking spaces, the zoning requirements, because that is specifically in the code.
So with regard to number 1 and number 2, it's the same thing, just kind of split up differently. Staff recommended that 1, we call the bullet points that aren't crossed out, be revised in a way to be reflected in the text of the plan. While strategy number 2 basically covers everything that's not crossed out again, but it's different than the first. This should become a new recommendation by itself. So this would be a strategy recommendation in the plan, while the first part is like a foundation to portion of the plan, the actual text. But again, that's staff's opinion.
John, what do you think? Put you on the spot. I mean,
No, I thought I just.
well, I mean, do you
Oh, you
like
mean
the
about combining the mechanical? combination?
having one be
Yeah,
a
there's,
plan, written out as a part of the plan, the other be a strategy? That's what I understood.
yeah, I guess, again, the one that's first one's up there when I started out drafting these, they drafted at different points in time. The second one is going to be emphasizing more transit. That was going to be the original difference. But again, to me, the most important part is just the parking space. And it's nice to have ingress, egress, traffic congestion. The only way, for example, in Mountain Road in Pasadena, the only way you're ever gonna improve congestion is by reducing the number of egress and ingresses to the different shopping. You have like every couple hundred feet, or every 100 feet, you have a roadway, and the businesses don't want to try and get them together and share access.
So there, go ahead, Kevin.
No, I don't have anything to say directly on this.
Well, so my question was, is there any more discussion on 1 and 2, or can we, is there, yes, is you ready to able to vote on it if they want to go with staff recommendation and provide a new recommendation, please? Tim?
I just have a question. What does eliminate highway choke points mean?
Where on Ritchie Highway, for example, you have 3 lanes, all of a sudden it drops down to 2 lanes, then it opens back up to 3 lanes.
Yeah.
And you'll notice every time there's congestion at those points.
Yeah.
And I know we don't like to talk about highways, but 90% of us use them. Not all just transit,
Right.
still driving.
Do we have a motion on what you want to
Steve
do?
has a
Yeah,
question.
just, it,
Oh, sorry, Steve, I can't see you. Yeah.
so, because I know that it could be a longer list here and everything, but smart traffic management, using, traffic signals, integrated traffic signals with, IP.
That's going on now. I mean, that's an active part of traffic operations. The difference here about ingress and egress is, one example, is if you look at Chick-fil-A, in certain park, Chick-fil-A and Starbucks are right next to each other, and people slow down to turn in or slow down because somebody's turning out. And that's during rush hour. It really creates a major problem. The rest of the day, it's still a problem. Because you're slowing. The most efficient use of the roadway actually is if everybody maintains the same speed limit, but there's other people like me that tend to think faster is better. So,
Well, I know when you exit Chick-fil-A, you're supposed to go past the mall, behind the mall. They don't want you to make it.
yeah, but people do.
Yeah,
But I think that's important in the county when it's talking about roadway management of talking to the businesses where everybody shouldn't have to get one separate thing. I mean, Chick-fil-A is what, like less than 100 feet. Starbucks is a small area. And it's a weird intersection.
it's very weird.
That all applies on state highway, because those entrances are on state roads.
Sorry,
Those entrances are on state roads.
that in Ritchie Highway, yeah.
Yeah, mountain roads, so that's a big part of it too, is working with the state to do combine the ingress egress.
Yeah, but they do come in and meet with people from zoning staff, right, permitting.
So going back to the first 2 again, just trying to keep the soundtrack of the conversation. Is there anything that SAC disagreed with related to staff recommendation? Is there something else that maybe should be added? What other things can we discuss about it? Kevin,
I'd make a motion that we adopt OPD's recommendation.
or number 1 and number 2?
Yes.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it.
Are there any other specific ones? I know other SAC members created, and provided, comments. Is there anything specific that you guys would like to call out? John?
This one is mine too, no surprise, right? But it has to do with wastewater treatment, and I sent a paper around to everybody.
Which number are we talking?
I did not print the numbers out, I'm sorry. So when it says provide the highest level economically achievable wastewater.
Number
treatment,
8.
Number 8.
Number 8, okay, yeah. And what happened there is, we were just talking before the meeting that my wife and I go line dancing up in Essex, which happens to be on the other side of Back River. From the Back River Water Treatment Plant to the city of Baltimore. City of Baltimore has 2 wastewater treatment facilities. The one there in Essex, which the state took over on July 1st, because this is going to sound terrible, but people during the pandemic, they had new equipment. During the pandemic, workers would come in, punch in, go home, come back, punch out. They were not maintaining the facility, and hence you had a lot of raw sewage that went into Back River, which happens to be upstream from us here in Region 4. We're the first ones to be affected by it in the entire county. The other wastewater treatment plant is the Patapsco wastewater treatment plant, which is at the intersection of Curtis Creek and Patapsco River. And that too is, the state has not, the last I heard, they're still in negotiations about whether or not the state would take over that. They were spewing out raw sewage, just not as much or as bad as Essex. But they were doing it. Again, that's very upriver. I live on Stony Creek. And when the, Baltimore poop comes out down the Patapsco River, it comes to Anne Arundel County, and it comes to Curtis Bay and Pasadena. Then Serena Park, then Arnold. I wrote letters to all the newspapers, to elected officials, number of environmental groups, and I got zero traction. The only one that has an interest is Blue Water Baltimore. And so I stayed in touch with a couple of people up there, but it boggles my mind that we talk about environment and how all these little things we should be doing. And we allow a government, which is on a large scale funded by the state, to put out this raw sewage or sewage that doesn't meet EPA and Maryland MDE standards. How can we tolerate that? I'm sorry, it just boggles my mind. And to say, the words that I put in here were just say, let's work with the city of Baltimore and the state on this. It's right now, the strategy that's in the Plan 2040 talks only about Anne Arundel facilities. Whereas most of, and I called up the director of the Cox Creek. And he said technically you can drink the water that we excuse from our facility. Not that anybody would, but it's that clean. So why is Baltimore, that's another 2 miles up the Patapsco River, allowed to get away with this? Because it's a city, because it's Baltimore. How can we allow this? I don't know. Sorry, I'll get down off my soapbox
Okay, so
for a minute.
main difference is that one is calling for cooperation with other municipal.
That's what I'm
Other
asking,
counties
how to
in
add
this
it to the.
And
to
the
the
other is
strategy
just-
that's in the plan. Right.
So what you all see is what John provided word for word. And what is in Plan 2040 state, provide the highest level of economically achievable wastewater treatment at all county water reclamation facilities in order to reduce pollutant loads to water bodies. So staff's recommendation was because that this is in Plan 2040 and the regional plan is supposed to build off of Plan 2040. It was not to include, because it was implied that that would already be included for Region 4 goals policy.
Except for the Baltimore City, the extra
yeah, he's
jurisdiction.
gonna be
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it first time.
Except for, well, it's different because it doesn't, what's in the plan doesn't include the extraterritorial
Right,
focus,
right.
which makes a lot of sense.
But in other places, we talk about a lot of the pollution from the Chesapeake Bay comes, of course, everybody talks about the Susquehanna,
Mhm.
but a lot of it comes from Indiana, Illinois, and Ohio, where you have the coal plants, and you have that soot, particulates going up into the air, and when it rains over the Chesapeake Bay.
Well, okay, what do we want to do with this? Does anybody have an idea for a motion?
I like the idea of including it. Being that 2040 does not state specifically, because I look at it as, and maybe somebody else, then I look at it as a loophole. Well, we didn't say in our strategy that we should do it, so we won't do it.
So you're saying, let's keep number 8 in, is that what you're saying? Is there a second? See Emma shaking.
Second.
All right, a second. All in favor of replacing,
I
not
have a
replacing,
paper here, if anybody wants to see more detail.
all those in favor of keeping number 8, because we don't think that the plan goes far enough, say aye. Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Any nays or abstentions?
Nays, we go.
It's still an abstention.
2 abstentions, Michael, and Amy, or Lori, sorry. So that passes.
Well, John, you're on a roll.
Yeah. Any more? No, I wrote pages on that stuff, right? But I like to think that I actually did research, so it just wasn't a comment.
Are there any other,
Yeah, so that was the big one to me.
We're moving along pretty quick. I mean, can we just continue to go down through these?
No, you guys discuss, again, this is an ethics workshop, so you guys want to move forward. I'm gonna get a couple more chairs out in a second, I see some more.
I do have one for number 4 that I'd like to talk about,
Okay,
but do we need a couple minutes to set that up? Or?
No, go ahead.
well, why don't we go to number 4? John
Yeah.
can tell us when we come back.
And this is one I wrote, and
Oh, okay.
it says eliminate financial and emotional costs of the broken variance processes that circumvent legislative law with administrative decisions. Now, I purposely worded it that way to be about as
Blunt,
large, yes, right. And knowing that, you know, that would probably never, ever be accepted. However, the response to that says, the variance process allows for land to be developed if the site does not adhere to the general regulations. And I was pretty involved back when Dobbins Island was a big issue, whether we're gonna build a house or not. And one of the things that I kept hearing was basically every lot can be developed. And basically what we were being told then was yes, it doesn't meet the same criteria that 1,000 other waterfront homes. But because of this variance process allows for land to be developed, if the site does not adhere to general regulations, at least that's what I interpret this to mean. That basically, if you're some oddball situation, you're in. And that doesn't necessarily mean you get to do whatever you want, but variance processes, to me, simply hit neighbor against neighbor. They create havoc for Arundel County employees, and to me, they ought to be minimized. And there's really no one that ever says that. And sorry, I do know other people who say it, but it
you're not
never,
saying get rid of.
it never
variances.
gets said in public.
Did you say you wanted to get rid of some variances or all?
Well, to me, there should really be a look at how variances operate and what impact it does have on people and how much does it really cost the county? And could we make that whole process much better, more streamlined? And yes, that probably means you have to tell some people, no, we're not gonna look at your situation. But
What about putting something
Right.
like that in, to look at it? And,
Can I comment?
it's
I think Bo's got a comment.
okay, Bo, what's your comment?
While I don't disagree that it's a very confusing process, it is a basic right of homeowners through the process of due process to have that opportunity for variances. That is, I mean, ingrained in law throughout the Maryland Constitution, the state or the county charter, and the US Constitution, that just because, there's a law that makes it legal to prevent something doesn't mean you don't have the right to challenge that through a court process, which is what the administrative hearing is. I don't disagree. I don't disagree that it's clunky. It's not often seen, though it is public, like information's available online as to when every hearing is. Community associations are notified. Maybe every neighbor is not notified if you're not within a certain distance of it. But, that's a basic covenant of rights for the homeowner to, to do as, what they would like to see fit. It doesn't mean they don't necessarily agree, or like you said, they'll let them do everything, but that's the process.
yeah, Bo, you said something about how that the variance is not a hearing, it's not a court process as far as I know. It's an
Administrative
administrative
The
process.
administrative law, like,
Right. So all I'm saying there is that, hey, if it really were a court process, you have a
Well,
much more
more expensive situation.
expensive.
Oh, no, but we're talking about the administrative hearing officer when they hear variances.
No, we're talking about were you talking about the Board of Appeals?
Yes.
or all of it?
Not
Talking
Board of
about
Appeals,
modifications or variances, there's a huge
Variance.
difference. Modifications are done administratively. Modifications are done by the administration, but variances are done through the court, the administrative hearing officer, and that is a process of the law.
Well, the law could be
There's a
changed, I
difference.
guess.
Correct. Based on previous rulings, state hearings, so are we talking about modifications? Or are we talking about variances? There's two different terms that we're looking for. Maybe Eric can better explain that.
I don't know what, yeah,
We're talking
modification
about
means
variance.
compared to variance. What I do know is that the house that was built on Early Heights Connector is a rather oddball situation. And I don't know the specifics of that, but,
I got a guess.
you gotta
Is
guess.
that they were measuring off the front, they weren't measuring off the connector.
Yeah.
They were measuring off the road that its front door is on.
Does anybody know if a variance was involved in that? Anyway, there are all kinds
That
of.
was,
Yeah,
that was
I've seen what they did
modifications
there.
ahead of time.
It's it's now, what is it, trapezoid
Yeah.
building?
Yeah.
Generally speaking, the development code as a whole is a big, cover, account, right?
Right.
It's a general set of rules, for everything. But as we all know in life, rules don't necessarily. Sometimes there are exceptions that need to be made for certain areas. And that's what the variance process helps with. So if I had a triangular piece of land where the front of my property meets the front setbacks or rear setbacks, if I want to add a shed, which is allowed to do by right in the property, I may not have the rear setbacks. I may not have the side setbacks, depending where my shed can go. So I would apply for a variance for a shed, and then that would be reviewed and eventually, hopefully, approved in this scenario. Through the variance process. That variance process is not there. I, as a homeowner, cannot have a shed, even though I'm allowed to, even though my zoning says I can have a shed, my land does not allow it.
Right.
So that's what the variance process is for.
Right.
Right, among other things. But that is a very basic example of variance.
Understood.
I think getting rid of variances or limiting variances is a huge lift. And I'm not sure we really are able to take that on.
I'm not gonna argue that we have to put this in here. But I wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity to say that I think it really
I
fits.
think both processes, the administrative hearing and the Board of Appeals, could use some citizen review. But I just don't know that that's
Oh.
would satisfy you.
I agree, they
Well, that's
both all could use review.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
He agrees that there could be a
review.
review.
Yeah, okay.
There's certainly
Is there-
improvements can be made to the process.
We're gonna leave it out the way it is recommended.
So keep staff's recommendation to not include it.
Right.
Is that what I'm hearing a motion for?
I'll make the motion.
Do you need one?
I don't know.
Yeah, just. To be safe, I think, because this is presented to, make the motion, vote on it.
Right, okay, did you make that motion
I did.
and who seconded it? Okay, all right, fine. All in favor of not using this number, which number is it for?
All in favor of not using it? All in favor of accepting OPZ's
Oh,
recommendation.
these
To not
recommendations,
include.
which
Not
is not,
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
I mean, they're kind of.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's a good.
All right, let me see the hands. Okay, cool. Online, did I have any nays or abstentions?
I didn't understand what the motion was.
Yeah, let me rephrase. The motion was to approve OPZ's recommendation to not include this strategy, the one on variances, the one we've been referring to as number 4, but it's the 5th row in the spreadsheet, to not include that in the plan.
Yay, okay.
Yeah, I was
All
there
right.
as well.
Good discussion.
Yay.
So where are we now? We've done, did we do 3? 3 is already.
We missed three.
All the grades existing neighborhoods.
And just for the reference, we don't have to talk about every single one, we just, the SAC, this is an opportunity for the SAC to discuss what they want. We can batch some of these together, if you guys would like, just through the process, this conversation go a little bit quicker as well, so just keep that in mind.
Are we able to, could we do more of these next time, just so that we have the time tonight to do what's on the agenda and also get through some of these. But there's another thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I'm gonna make a motion, and might not be popular, but, we were handed, you sent this to us, I think, 10+ days ago. I'm gonna make a motion unless anyone has a specific one they want to discuss, that we accept OPD's recommendation on all of these.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All in favor of accepting all of OPZ's?
Real quick on discussion, is it?
Oh, discussion, okay, we'll have a discussion.
Just on that, not necessarily against it, I just want to make sure I understand it. Does that mean overriding any vote that we've already taken on a different one?
No,
And for the record, so far.
So all the ones we haven't discussed or voted on?
These are all
That
new
wasn't clear in
recommendations.
the motion.
Yeah, I think, well, to be clear, I think we voted in favor of OPZ's recommendation for the 4 we've discussed. And then my understanding of the motion was the remaining vast math of 18 that we haven't discussed would be voted to go with OPZ's recommendation.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
There was a
Further
motion.
discussion?
Yeah, I personally would like more information about number 10. There's a lot in there. There's 3 different studies that came from the SAC number. I'd just like to have a little bit more understanding about why that individual thought all these studies were necessary.
That call to housing,
Yes.
Yes.
that's me.
Okay. And John, you did a wonderful job on strategy papers and stuff. The only point that I'd like to make is that the general development plan is full of studies. Studies that should have already been done to help us be able to make some of the decisions that we're supposed to be making at the region level. And so I just don't know if anybody has actually pulled up all those studies. Prioritized, when they're gonna be done, who's gonna do them. And so I just don't know where this fits into all those others that are being done right now.
As a 40-year bureaucrat, I totally sympathize with what you just said.
So
Heaven forbid I be one to recommend another study, but
we are in the middle of the motion. Can we?
oh, sorry.
No,
This is-
And that's what discussion's for.
all right.
And to be clear, my motion was, if anyone has a specific one they want to address, we can address it. I just want to call those out, then vote on everything else together, if possible. So if anybody has a specific one that they reviewed over the past 10 days and they came to this meeting or now want to discuss it,
Okay, so
let's
that's,
circle those and discuss, but then let's vote on the rest.
okay, that's a different kind of motion. Does everybody?
of it.
That's a
But
modification.
if you discuss 10, we may be able to lump it back into the omnibus motion. If we
Well, I think
discuss
it
10.
sounds like you're saying, generally take OPZ's recommendation, but if somebody has a specific one, you
Correct.
would like to hear that.
Yep.
Makes sense to me. You second, the
Yeah,
motion is amended.
Well, so what's the order though? I mean, are you?
So
are you gonna
if anybody,
And then whatever time remaining,
yeah, I think if anybody has, I think we just talked about number 10. So if we want to circle 10 and set it aside,
Okay.
we'll talk about that after we take this vote. That's my recommendation,
So right now it includes everything, but the ones we voted on, everything but number 10.
number 10.
unless.
And then, and any
If somebody could bring up,
correct, and if there's any others that want to be brought up, now's the time to bring them up.
does anybody have another one they want?
I don't know. Can we just read through real quickly? And then if we don't want to discuss, we don't have to discuss.
All right, let's take at least 5 minutes. Is that enough time?
Well, I've got comments, I just need to look at them.
Eric, remind me of the one, 15, 16, and then 19, 20, 21, 22.
Yeah, so if you look at number 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, and 22. Those are existing strategies the SAC already recommended and came to a consensus with, except for the red parts. The red parts are new based on public comment and maybe SAC comment, but the public comment. So if you don't like the red, you just let us know, we can talk about it. but the black, it's already there, it's already been approved by consensus by you all.
You just wanted to talk about the study.
Yeah, and I just want to make a general comment also, if that's the only one, is that, you know, a lot of the other strategies, new strategies, are offered down there at the bottom of the page. And the individual's not recognized, but assuming that most of those came from one person. But, you know, if you take a look at, and I'm a bike person, I'm on bike AAA on the board, but we have a new walk and roll plan, and there are at least 4 sections of that plan that directly pertain to Region 4. Within those sections, there's a heck of a lot of great suggestions, on things to do, in this area. And then, in the appendices, there's priorities of some of those projects. And then after that, there's another whole section in there that gives costs, estimated costs for any of those projects. And you can pick those out that relate to our particular region. I don't know what more we can add, other than to take a look at that plan and say, these are the things that we would like to have. This just seems to pile on more of what's already within that plan. And that's what I don't understand, that I would sit there and go through each one of these and say, why is this necessary if we already have got a plan and a very detailed plan? I mean, there's only one other plan, and that's the Parks and Recs plan that actually puts projects down and then it gives an estimate of how much it's going to cost to do it. So it's a wonderful plan. I just don't know why we're having to add more.
So one, at the very beginning of this process, and those are great ones. At the very beginning of the process, for many presentations, we had that cog machine image, right? Where we had the region plan is one of the gears of the bigger picture, right? And one of the points of that is that all these plans work together, as you know. So the more that the recommendations can be represented in different plans, more likely to actually. So that's at least one theory and one philosophy, anyway. So if you see each plan, like implement this, 3 different plans, it's the same thing. Likelihood is that there's stronger backing for that from a implementation standpoint.
So I completely agree with you. And we went through a whole list of all that family of plans at the beginning of this exercise and said that many of these strategies should in fact tie into those plans so that we know those people that have put those plans together will be able to get the funding. I just think at a bike guide that it's disproportionately right now oriented towards bike infrastructure. relative to all the other things that we have in our strategies. So, and you just measure that by the number of strategies when you take a look at the plan. I can't say it any differently.
So would you like to call any other ones out?
No, because I mean, this was, you know, we got this, as you said, 2 weeks ago or so. This is the purpose of discussion, but if I was to go back and take a look at the strategies that we have, we never prioritized them, you know, within the GDP, at least it did near term, midterm, long term. It gave you some sense. But right now, everything's a priority with it, and not a criticism. It's just the way that we did it. That there is nothing that indicates that any one of these things has more, you know, emphasis. And again, the general development plan does in fact give you some of that right now. We haven't outlined our strategies to those priorities that are within the plan right now. So it's just a comment.
Steve, I just
and
like-
for that reason, right now, I could not vote on a whole block of these strategies.
I was just gonna suggest we try to vote on the block of 15 through 22, because these were existing strategies that we already had.
I don't think the ones here at the bottom.
Yeah,
It's revised.
Yeah,
Yeah, revised. Okay.
So, and there's words, you know, and one says it's a new strategy, but I think everything else is just an edit, to add a bus shelter, to add this, to add that. I just wonder if we could have a motion to, again.
So right now, we're in the motion. If
Oh,
we're
yeah,
calling
yeah,
them.
okay.
So if there's any, we have number 10 on the side. Is there any other is there another strategy number that you guys want to talk about further?
Yeah.
Right now, we're voting on all the whole other than 10.
Yeah, Kevin's proposal would cover.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay,
Maybe Steve can answer this, but with regard to walk and roll. I think I attended one of their online meetings and I asked a question about how much participation has Arundel County Police had with the way they laid out, you know, all of this plan. And basically, I think I got an answer that was, no, there hasn't been any. And that was, you know, a bit disturbing.
Yeah.
So is there, do you know, has there been?
I can't say for sure, but I think if you take a look at the composition of the Transportation Commission, we've had, you know, a large role in this, that the police are represented on.
Okay, so there, do you think they're represented in the?
You know, how much you've got coordinated within the overall AC.
They're on the bicycle commission, they're not on the transportation commission.
On the bicycle. I'm sorry, that's what.
could we get back to Kevin's motion?
So number 10 is being called out. Are there any
Yeah.
other?
Any other ones we don't want to take the staff's recommendation? We want to discuss them separately. You may want the staff recommendation after discussion, but you want to specifically talk about anything besides number 10. Okay, are we ready to vote? Okay. Now, just to make can somebody explain to me what you think the motion is? Because I'll probably mess it up.
I can summarize my.
Okay.
I'm gonna,
Be specific.
Huh?
Maybe specific.
yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the motion, as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
The motion is to vote on everything as a whole. And go with staff's recommendation for numbers 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, 20.
Correct.
Okay, that's the motion. And we've had a second.
I guess I have one more question, so then after this, we're gonna vote separately and.
Correct.
Okay, so if you have a thing you really want to talk about, raise it now, but 10 is what we've got. So all in favor of the motion as presented, as seconded, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? Abstention.
No, I think I saw a hand go up and I heard an aye, so I think we're all in agreement. We just want to.
Okay. Good. Okay, so number 10.
Did you want to comment? Or shall I do an introduction?
John, my first question would be, who are these studies? Who's going to use these studies?
I would hope the county council, the county executive.
Well, I agree that studies don't seem to get done on time too much or too, a lot of them, so many of them. I mean, it seems to me one of these things could be prioritize the studies to be undertaken in the next 5 years, because you can't do them all. Anyway,
Yeah, I acknowledge that this would be a tough set of studies to do. What piqued my interest is when we had the lady from the Maryland real estate, I've forgotten what the exact,
Yeah.
Karen McJunkin.
was that the name? And she mentioned that the average cost of government processes, requirements, fees or whatever was in the neighborhood of $90,000. And since then I did some research trying to find where a study had been done like that. I could not find it. I found some references, trying to remember, I think one in Washington State. And it was like, well, over like $150,000. But I think the cost in talking, three of my gym buddies are developers. And I talked to them about this too, and they talked about time is money. When you go in and it used to be you go in, you meet with P and Z and you get a quick yes or no, and you had one person with you. Now it's like you have to take five specialists to go in and meet with P and Z. This is what I'm hearing from them. I don't have the personal experience there.
and you have to do studies of all kinds of things.
And they have to do all kinds of study.
Yeah.
So how burdensome is this? Also, if you look at the APF, we have 6 APFs, if I'm correct on that, one of which is education. And it blows my mind that the first thing that, when they're talking about trying to streamline the process or make housing more affordable, you want to trash education. You want to say that, oh, we don't care about crowded schools. You know, we're just going to exempt education.
I was wondering, do you, are these studies that, and this is a question, so if you don't have an answer, it's fine, but, do you, happen to know if these are the kinds of studies that seem to get the most results from local governments? Like if they see the results of these studies, it's the most likely to create change? That's fine. I was just,
You work with the political process as much as any of us. right?
Well,
but I don't know what the studies are doing.
and it sound, and then I think the way that I would see these studies used is if I were representing a developers organization. And this would be the kind of study that would be commissioned by a government relations firm to then present to try to push for modification. So did you
Private
look,
study, you're saying.
right, prepared by industry.
To try
So
and
did you
reduce-
look at if there were trade associations that represent these interests? Because this sounds like one that would, but then, then it's going to be coming with from industry, which would make it suspect right out of the gate. But that's what this kind of sounds like. Is it some developer association going in to try to get relief, get some adjustment?
This came purely out of my imagination.
Yeah, but I think
Okay.
that might, if they're out there, maybe it's already been prepared by some consultants hired by some developer association, but I don't even know
I have a-
if such a thing.
Is that a bad thing?
Can I ask Eric? a
No,
question?
it's a wonderful thing.
Does planning and zoning, do they do any of these analyses of the cost of, the review, or do we know? I know people go through an awful lot. I just went through all the final plans that were this thick and something that my client's opposing, but the tremendous amounts of work that go into it. Has anybody from planning and zoning looked at that?
I'm not, let me be question yourself. I know that there are aspects that establish into, but I feel from my experience in other jurisdictions and other states, I think Walter, I think it would be hired out. It is a heavy lift, a lot of this stuff.
So you don't think it's,
I'm not gonna comment. on
Okay.
what The county does.
What I took away from that briefing, which was an absolutely excellent briefing, was that they were concerned about the fees that the county charges. They said they can't control material costs, they can't control the price of land, all that other kind of stuff. But when you take a look at what Anne Arundel County charges and all the various fees right now, that it's ranks up at the top compared to other.
I've heard that. I don't know for sure.
But that's worth a study. To me,
Well, it seems like that would have been done if it's true. We should know about it.
well, the only reason I say that it might not is because you have to go across multiple directorates to figure out what all those fees are. Some of them, most of them reside in inspections and permits. But when they go out and they take a look in the sketch plan and finally to the final plan, where all the fees are going to be paid. There's a whole array of people. I mean, there's a whole website, the county website that lists, not all of them, but a good number of them. And it's not the same across all developments. But I just think that if you went across the directorates and you put them all on one page, you would know the reason why nobody goes out and does a study, because they're all in the stovepipes. And so maybe it's worth taking a look at that, saying whether or not, because I personally have concern. I know some of those fees go into special line items, within the county. We found out years ago that money that was going in for, forest conservation, where they paid in lieu of fees instead of actually preserving trees, that we had amassed millions of dollars, and those dollars weren't going to plant trees, to buy property, to plant trees on and so forth. And so there are a number of those kinds of accounts that are associated, with some of those fees. And the question is, who's monitoring all that? So to me, it'd be an interesting study, if that's part of controlling development costs. But that's why I say, who's the customer, on any of these studies? Where's the change going to be driven?
How many times have we talked about affordable housing? I can't count, but it seems like virtually every meeting, including tonight, has mentioned affordable housing. And I'm now on grandchildren looking at being able to afford a house in Anne Arundel County or somewhere. And so that's a big deal. Like, if a house is going to cost 500,000 instead of 400,000 or 300,000, that's a big deal. And it was highlighted to me when I started thinking about it, looking for examples of how much it costs. As I mentioned a moment ago, we have an APF for education. We have 6 APFs, but the one that we're willing to exempt first is education. To me, education is the
biggest amount.
APF. I think all of us want our kids to be well educated. And if we're preventing people from getting into a better neighborhood, whatever, because of an extra 100,000 of fees. And the developers I talked to at the gym, so these are disconnected conversations. The big thing to them is not the fees, it's the time that they're set. One said, it takes me 5 to 7 years from when I buy the property to when I can actually start construction. Now, whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. But, and that all that time, if you're carrying the land 5 to 7 years, waiting to develop it, there's a cost associated with that. So if we're willing to trash education, shouldn't we be willing to look at how much it costs, what truly is affordable housing, and how it comes about, why it is so expensive?
I think that maybe can go on outside of this room. I mean, I would like the developers, and I've talked to a couple of them, to meet with those of us who would like to see affordable housing and find out how they can help get affordable housing faster, cheaper, better. That's just a huge issue.
Right, but they're pointing to the county, can already tell you the answer,
Well, but
or what their answer.
what they're in,
Yeah.
then I think you go back and you look at how is it correct? But I just think that's a huge something that. Yeah, Kevin.
I mean, I think a couple of things. One, we've been asking who would these studies be performed for? I think it's the county, but through the county, I think it's also the county citizens who pay tax money that the county then utilizes. And these fees are, their fees, their taxes that the county is entrusted to spend efficiently. And I think, like Steve mentioned, the Forest Conservation Fund, capital connection fees, a lot of other fees that get paid, and we don't necessarily know. There's not clarity on how they're used or whatnot. So I think there's an efficiency that you're looking for through these studies. And I think we as citizens who pay taxes are to benefit or would benefit from these studies. I think in terms of affordable housing, it's not just, it's all housing being affordable and making all housing across the county more affordable, and just through a supply and demand that, that's how that works. You can cut fees, not necessarily reduce, you don't even have to necessarily reduce regulation. That's like way down the road from when these studies are done. But if through the study, you realize there's unnecessary redundancy or more ways to make it more efficient to utilize the fees, that may result in total costs of combined, but the total fee would be less, but then you would make housing more affordable on the whole. I mean, I like this recommendation. I would make a motion to adopt this recommendation, but to make it an actual, not just make it text, which I know was OPZ's recommendation, but to make it a strategy. I would make that motion.
Number 10 is.
It is a strategy?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said working. Okay, so I say we take OPZ's recommendation.
Put back in.
Yeah, very good. There we go.
All right, now, do we have to vote on 10 now?
Yes, no motion.
Motion,
Second.
okay, motion and second. All those in favor of taking the staff's recommendation on number 10, say aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, abstention.
I thought you were government.
Okay, so,
For the first time in the Region 4 SAC history, we are 2 minutes ahead of schedule. So we can let's take a 10-minute break and come back and maybe get introduction to the zoning.
Dave, where's John Warren tonight?
I'm sure that he's.
Can you tell who's on?
Some of us will do much fun.
never been ahead of schedule.
You're the only-
No.
Read that. Well,
Oh,
okay.
Say yeah.
What'd they do?
So, you okay?
Oh, I'm good.
I'm really.
Okay, so the zoning applications are open to the public from May 1st, the end of the month. So if you, your friends, family, whoever want to apply for a zoning change, they're still able to do so
On the property you
on the property you own. Thank you. Keep that in mind. The application is still open. Additionally, you can view the draft zoning map by comments. You as SAC members can do so, the members of the public can do so. That's also available. Go to aacounty.org/region4. It'll be the first point in the yellow box. So, tonight we're just gonna talk about, so go to the slide. So right now there are 2 meetings scheduled, June 12th, June 26th. These are to discuss the zoning applications. June 26th may not be needed. Discuss everything through June 12th. Tonight gave me hope, so we'll see. So on that note too, if you guys remember the Survey Monkey questionnaire that you guys did for the strategies. Do you guys feel comfortable enough doing something similar for the zoning applications? So we can make the process a little more efficient, but still have the opportunity to discuss in a group.
To be clear, staff would provide you like a similar spreadsheet of information like we did with the strategies tonight. And then we would have a corresponding Survey Monkey to go through, where we would be like on row 1 of the spreadsheet, we talked about this one. Do you agree with staff's recommendation?
Just so we can, just so staff, if there's one that everybody agrees on or has the consensus already, then it doesn't necessarily need to be brought up to discuss, but everything will be voted on by the SAC. That is important to understand, because this is a duty that the SAC member has. But just to kind of speed that process up and make it more efficient, more important.
So what kind of mapping are we gonna see?
So you would see, the information you would see the address of the property, the requested zoning, and the current zoning. and other information as well, but it's in a chart. So you would have to go on the map and type it in. But we're gonna get, and I know we haven't given you anything zoning wise right now, but that is coming very soon, as I mentioned.
I mean, I'm okay with it. I'd make a recommendation maybe for the group if we went through the review you're gonna do and then make the decision.
Sure.
again. I just, everybody might be a little bit more comfortable with it.
Absolutely.
Could I ask just, do you know what the volume is right now of the total zoning applications that we would have to look at? And I realize we have another week or so.
So yeah, you guys are gonna be able to review every single application that's come through the door. And I think right now we're in the ballpark of about 23-ish or so.
Okay.
And I think there may be one or two that an applicant made a mistake on and they may be withdrawing, but right now, and then we're gonna get that in writing, so that's gonna be covered and we'll let everybody know, but right now we have 23 or so.
Okay.
And for how much longer is that?
About a week and a half to the end of the month.
Okay.
Public, at the end of the meeting, you guys have. Okay, so if there's no questions so far, we can start with the first, the first example, which happens to be the first application we received. It's at 10/16/1024 East College Parkway. Jesse, you want to take over?
Cool. So, yeah, I just heard Amy say she remembers being over here, in earlier discussions, that's correct. So the one that I have highlighted in this blue shade is the one that we're talking about, but we did talk about some land use change applications over in this area. So hopefully this looks a little bit familiar to y'all. And so this, property that's highlighted in blue, is from, the applicant is requesting C4 zoning. Let me show you. One sec
I
here.
forgot my cheat sheet of the zonings.
This is on College Parkway?
That's correct.
College Parkway.
Oh, so East College Park. Yep, so the requested zoning on this property is C4, and just a little bit about it from the applicant. It's a 24-acre parcel with a church and a pastor home. It hasn't been in use since 2014, and the new owner is looking to use it as a church.
You don't need C4 for church.
That's
Exactly.
correct. Did everybody get a chance to read it so I can go back to the map? Okay, sorry, because of the dimensions of the projector, I gotta stop share and move it, you know, it works.
What designation do you need for a church?
Great question. It's my understanding that a church can be in,
Residential?
yeah, in residential zoning districts.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I thought.
yep,
'Cause that's R1 or R2?
this is R1 that we're looking at right
Yep.
now. On this parcel, it's split zoned R1 and OS through the middle. On the draft map online, staff recommended R1 for the entire parcel. The planned land use for this parcel is low density residential. But yeah, so this right here on East College Parkway, that's the access road. We're right along US 50 on here. I can zoom out for a second. if you'd like to see
Can I
more.
give some history on this property?
Yes,
So-
so
Actually,
the,
Could not that history, but previous history. So the Broadneck Council defeated a development that was gonna blend these 3 to 5 parcels together that are inside of York Road and Logan Road about 5 to 7 years ago. It was designed, it had come as proposal, never got to the sketch stage because the residents were so upset about it. But upgrading to, so all those other ones that are to the right of it, basically, that back up to the long, thin ones along Logan. This was a lot of public meetings we held as Broadneck Council because they were trying to buy all the parcels, put it together, and then put in about 200 homes. And they were trying to go from R1 to R5 and then go cluster. So I mean, any upgrades, just to give people perspective as to the residents there have fought continuously to prevent it from being upgraded in zoning.
One thing too, the staff recommendation for this application was to keep the R1 zone.
Yeah,
Okay,
this kind of seems like a no brainer.
It could be used for a church, which the developer says they want to
That's what the application says.
Pastor.
Oh, okay.
The past,
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of sensitive areas there to back up to the Cochrane Woods of the Sandy Point State Park, along with the peripheral streams. There's a special type of shrimp that community college gave an entire presentation on that exists within some of those streams. And it's the headway waters to the Meredith Creek, which comes across under 50, as you can see, and shows up next to the protected farms along that area.
yeah, it looks like Meredith Creek crosses right through where they're talking.
Correct. Correct. Just as to note that area, because that's been well debated over the years to try to keep it as our.
Yeah.
And what can C4 be used for? Anything commercial?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the highest, like, most intense. Yes.
Anything.
Now, fine too, so say you disagree with staff's recommendation of R1. But you disagree with C4, you can provide, the SAC can provide a new recommendation too. So there could be, what the applicant wants, what the staff recommends, and then what the SAC recommends, and all three could be different. So.
But are you sure the staffer, I mean, the owner knew that he didn't need C4 or?
That's his concern.
What's the question, Ann?
Why did they apply for C4 if they didn't need any kind of commercials? And that's just my question. I don't know. I mean, are they trying to sell it to somebody else? Or,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Can we open the
I mean,
application?
I like R1.
Not tonight.
We really didn't think we were gonna get this far.
So we just wanted to kind of give you guys a little information on what the discussion process is. If you guys feel comfortable enough to vote on it tonight, you can. If not, that's fine too. We will be giving you all information about all the applications in the next couple of weeks. But again, we try to get some applications that we thought could be discussed without that information, but at the
I
same
think we're
time.
gonna need all the information.
Yeah, so some of the categories that like staff provided on the website that we were gonna be looking at is it consistent with Plan 2040 plan land use?
Right.
And so I can pull up the plan land use layer if you'd like, but the plan land use for this parcel is low density residential, which is more consistent with a R1 or R2 zoning.
Did they apply for a land use change during Plan 2040?
They did not,
And how many acres is it?
about 20.
Big church parking.
So another thing that we look at is it consistent with the existing use and the surrounding area? So, like we said, the existing use is a church that hasn't really necessarily been in use. And it looks fairly, wooded here, but the surrounding area is R1, directly to the east, west, and north is R1. There is some commercial, but that's across US 50, so that's different neighborhood. What else do we think about? We think about like the sewer service category, which let me pull it up here.
I think they're on wells there.
I think you're probably correct.
They are, it stops at Bayhead Road,
Yeah.
further down, further west.
So they're on planned service in the Broadneck sewer service area. Other things like someone asked earlier about like past, like they applied for Plan 2040 or past administrative decisions. I believe that this property applied for town center zoning in the past, but don't quote me on that one. I don't know. Does anybody else have this switched open? But yeah, they did not apply for a plan land use or Plan 2040 land use change.
Did they say, I mean, I'm just still confused about the C4. Did they can say what they wanted to use this for?
So they said they wanted to use the C4 for the church, and that's enough information on, like, that's a reasonable request. I mean, this is an open application period. You could say, I own this library right now and I'd like to put in, I don't know, a gas station, and
But
you
they
can
don't
request
have
that,
to
but you
use
can,
it for the church.
yeah.
That's the, you know, I think everybody knows it, that if you, say you want it for a church, but then you have a different thought after you get C4, and you decide to sell it. I mean, that's what you gotta think about. You can't say to somebody, well, we zone you if you make it a church forever or whatever.
So when we review these, we do a survey monkey type thing and you send us a spreadsheet. I saw on your spreadsheet, it had a link to the application where we have all of that available to us.
I would like to say yes, but I just in case there's any like information that's like sensitive for some reason, we might have to redact. For example, if we get to the next one that we would potentially look at, somebody give me their phone number
Okay,
in case we had questions.
this is all public information, correct? I mean, I'm just that, I mean, these are applications that, and so, yeah, I mean, I would just encourage as much information that could be given to us as possible. And I'd encourage my members on this committee to review those applications specifically, because a lot of times that's where you get more of the history and story. Than just, looking at the plan, land use and everything is important, but also understanding why someone's coming to us. People put a lot of effort and time and money into these applications usually. So I think we should give them our, give them our attention.
What kind of costs are associated with following these applications?
There's
To submit to the county.
There's nothing.
But if you hire an attorney.
And money you borrowed to put the land purchase.
Yeah.
Eric, I'd like to recommend, when we had this discussion before, you had pulled out some criteria that is within the GDP that OPZ uses, and it was just kind of going through these. And it'd be really nice to have that checklist right up here so that it kind of guides our discussion, to include the fact that, I gave you some of the criteria that the BCC used when they evaluated the last movement. And I just think that we all should be consistent on each one of these. That Bo just did a great job providing some historical information. We won't have that from everybody, but we will have a process that ensures fairness for every one of these applications.
So that criteria is on the website. If you put zoning down, just go over down, it's there. But yeah, we can absolutely put it off in the next meeting and have it blaring in everybody's. We can have that.
This document to the SAC, this is what planning zoning looks at.
I have it up on the screen right now.
That's what I mean.
So yeah, we can print this off, maybe have two versions of it, at least one for here, so when we're discussing this in June 12th. And we can have it referenced really quick. So from what I'm understanding, it sounds like no one's really comfortable voting tonight, there's one information, which is fair. But does everybody feel comfortable if we give you and accept the chart to be able to answer the questions on the survey monkey, just so staff can kind of collect and see which ones already have the consensus, just to make the process a little more efficient for discussions. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So then we did have another one, but we don't have to talk about the topic again. Unless you guys would like to see another apple.
Well, we got
Yarn.
time.
Okay, yeah, so the other application, it's
I know where it is.
this is 7938 Shipley Drive. It is currently, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse, a non-conforming marina,
That's correct.
and it has 3 residential units on the site. And they are requesting MA2.
Will there be any pictures of these things, or if we can go out there and look at it?
So staff will be driving, so part of the staff's recommendation, we are taking driving tours, going inside it. Make sure that what's on the ground actually makes the recommendation to be fine.
Sorry, I know what Larry.
You got a satellite overlays.
Yeah, I think we're looking at the sewer map. There we go.
Is this?
So it's this funky shaped line right here in the middle. And so like Eric said, this is, an existing marina with light sails, so it's a little bit, different than like a community marina where you can go and launch your boat if you live there. This one is, more open for like sails and such, but it's still a light one. And it's been, used as that, for some time, and so they have a non-conforming use certificate. And so, they do have a planned land use of residential, low density residential. Potentially because this one might have been missed in the Plan 2040 analysis, you know, we only had how many acres of the county to go through, and one flip through our grasp. And so, the request is for MA2, which is consistent with the existing use. That non-conforming use certificate, they would still be a non-conforming use because there are 3 residential structures on the property. So they would still need a non-conforming use, but at least their business would match their zoning. For some other things, so we talked about Plan 2040, we talked about, so for surrounding, it matches the existing development, but you can see here the surrounding adopted zoning right now. Is residential R2. For sewer service, I can turn that layer back on and we can look at it.
What is the main road that's off of?
The main road that it's off of, it looks like it's this Nancy Road, but let me,
The bigger road.
the bigger one is Bayside Beach.
Bayside Beach, okay, thank you.
So
Bayside Beach.
Okay.
I think it might be called Shipley's Anchorage.
It is.
Okay.
Or
sorry.
Shipley
Yeah.
Anchor.
What I call it?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't know if you could call it anything.
Oh, yeah, you could be correct. Sometimes we tend to not talk about like the name of the property just because, you know, the zoning will exist beyond that marina. You know,
I know,
no,
just
you're-
so people
you're
can
good,
see,
like,
yeah.
people- No, I
Yeah.
totally get it. Yeah. But yeah, let's look at the sewer service.
So you're
Does anybody
thinking
want
that this would not change the way they're operating? If we go to M, I mean, they couldn't be a community association, I mean, they're not a community area, so the next idea is M2.
MA2, yep. So for their sewer, they're at no public service in the rural sewer service area. But yeah, if anybody else, like, so, yeah.
So currently they're not conforming, so they have houses and they have a marina.
Mhm.
So they're not conforming now because they've got the marina, but if we switch it, they'll be non-conforming because they have houses.
No, the houses are non-conforming right now too. You
Okay.
can't have 3 houses. What is the zoning, R2?
R2.
Yeah, you can't have 3 houses in the R2.
Okay, so all the way around.
They're
it's-
not conforming all the way.
Okay.
And, you know, when Cindy was going through the land use for Plan 2040, there are a number of these kind of properties where it's a house and behind them, oh, they have a marina with 10 slips, 15 slips. They're all over the county. And during Plan 2040, they were identified as maritime land use with the intent that they would get a maritime zoning district. I mean, we feel when staff went through this, that this got missed. It would take care of the nonconformity for the marina use. It would not take care of the nonconformity for the residential use. All the way around, they have too many residential units.
And nothing that we have in place today in our zoning ordinance is gonna permit 3 homes and a marina. On. They would need to subdivide the houses out and.
Did that happen because those houses have been there since 1940 or, well, I mean,
For the zoning code.
yeah, before things were even focused on in that way, or is that something that they could have built more recently and?
No, I mean, usually when you have a certified non-conforming use, gone through a process to identify that these uses existed prior to the zoning code. So I would say they've been there a long time.
Yeah.
What more can be done with an MA2 zoning compared to where they are now? They're fixed right now, correct? They can't do anything more. Is there anything more they'd be able to do with the,
Well, they're not conforming, they don't have any zoning that allows.
right, but if they got the Marina 2
MA2.
zoning, is there something else that they would be able to do? Like build a restaurant or a bigger
Yeah,
restaurant?
that's what we.
That's
Sand.
MD.
So we, at the next couple of zoning meetings, hopefully we'll have Bonnie from zoning to answer the comments. So if you do have questions, I like that about other applications or this application, Donnie will be here to help kind of provide it.
So can you get rid of the shading just so we can see the satellite?
Bless you. I know that
Is
there's
that a pond?
a number of
also
people
on
have talked to me about existing marinas that want to expand, so that I can do that. As a concern.
So and again, just to reiterate this point, like, there are basically two non-conforming issues now. In the MA2 zoning, which staff is recommending, as well as when the applicant's applying for it, we just make it the whole property be one. So it's reducing the amount of non-conforming, which is generally a positive.
What's the dark spot?
It's some kind of pond, we believe.
I think it's bottom painting barnacles.
It is pitch black on the map, sorry.
So any other questions about the process we're asking you guys to undertake?
Oh, and one question. I've asked this before. I know that you notified everybody by a postcard that this was happening. Does anybody get notice that this request is being made, is it adjoining or next door to them?
But again, this is not the final opportunity for public input. So because everyone's been notified initially through this process, they're informed of the process. Look at the final draft plan that you guys will review, then we'll go to the PAB, they'll have opportunity to talk to the PAB, and then they'll have opportunity to provide testimony at county council as well.
I just know that we had, last time, we had people that there's no sign, there's no, outward and visible sign.
No, there
So-
never is with a comprehensive.
Well, I know, we were trying to get it, but
There'll be another public review. For the board that was confused.
We got the initial plan review, PAB plan review, and then the county council plan review that everybody can review and comment on.
If the county council adds a zoning, a rezoning that hasn't been through the rest of the public process, there is a requirement that they're gonna have to put. a sign
post
on
the
the
sign,
property.
okay, good.
But it's only if something gets added by the county council as an amendment.
Yeah, those amendments were terrible last time. Chris, Trumbauer did that amendment.
Yes, it was an amendment.
Great.
Basically, right now, comprehensive zoning is open. It's open. Anybody that owns a piece of property can apply in regions 2, 4, and 7. They'll still be able to probably put an application in during planning advisory board. We saw this with Plan 2040 land use, right? The bulk of them came in early, but then when it went to PAB, we had some more come in.
Yeah,
So honestly, we don't want to say, well, you missed the May 1 to June 1. We're not going to let you apply. We're going to take them in at planning advisory board and make a recommendation on it, right? Because the last thing we want is for the applications to come in during the county council. That's when you're in the pressure cooker of the 95-day timeline. So we really want everything to come in. But what happened in the 2011 rezoning is, I guess, a lot of properties did come in during county council.
yes, they did.
And
And they didn't go
so,
to planning and zoning. They rocked.
that's right. So later, Chris Trumbauer sponsored a
Yeah.
text amendment that required that if a council person was gonna put a rezoning in during the council process, you had to put a sign on the property so the neighbors got
Right.
some kind of notification, because they weren't in the earlier public
Yeah,
process.
okay, that was really important.
And I can bring you the language. It's in a weird place in the code. We can bring you that section next time.
Well, that'll be good, because sometimes the council person would bring the amendment up 2 weeks before a vote. And if nobody knew, they didn't have any, we had people coming and saying, so I'm glad he did that. That was good. Okay, well,
So just one final thing, again, June 12th is the next meeting. It is at Broadneck Library. And then likely the next meeting would be June 26th. That could potentially be here, or if we need to stay later than 8 o'clock, we may have to go back to our county office. So just kind of depends how discussions flow and how many applications we get between now and the end of the month. So
Eric, you may have said this already, but beyond the June meetings, this would supposedly wrap up everything we're supposed to be doing according to the steps.
Right.
But we said we were gonna go back and revisit, you know, the strategies and the vision and just see how all this is being put together. When is that timeline gonna occur?
Sure, so so the goal is to have a draft plan created and written by early July. And we're gonna send that to you guys as soon as it's done, right? So you guys can comment on directly, provide your input, and then we'll take that information and we can go from there. We can have a July meeting if you would like. That's solely up to the SAC. So there will be opportunity for you to comment directly onto the draft plan and provide your input that way.
Okay, and last question. So, I know I said this before, if you take a look at all those strategies right now, they could be generic to the majority of region plans. I mean, there's not very much in there that specifies something specifically to Region 4, except like tonight where we talk something on Ritchie Highway or College Parkway or whatever. How are we going to add the additional flavor to this, which maybe puts some specific priorities in there from the communities? And what I'm saying is a vision for College Parkway. Maybe a comment about the importance of noise setbacks along highways. A particular item or two that came from a walk and roll plan that said this particular project is of importance to a community. How's that going to happen?
So a lot of it will happen when we write up the different community descriptions. So in this way we can talk about what's important to each community and how it may differ from one another a little bit. So like the Arundel community may focus in some aspects about College Parkway and the built environment, something like that. So maybe there's an aspect here or there about that. And then if there's anything that you feel is missing, again, that's the opportunity that they seek to comment on it and provide that input. Say, hey, you forgot about, you need to add this in. That's an opportunity that plan's written to really let us know. Because we've been taking notes, we're listening to everything you guys say all throughout the meeting. And we're even though we're not necessarily showing you the draft right now, but we are going to put that in the plan and have your final input on it or sort of.
Eric, I want to respond to that. So you mentioned walk and roll is broken down. It's got projects listed with general costs for each project. So what John Spencer did earlier around the time the strategies got drafted is he sent us detailed emails and he sent them to you all as well. Some of that has now been incorporated, right, with the 22 things that came today. If you think there are specific things in walk and roll, which has only recently been adopted by county council, I think you should pluck them out of there and send an email to the group. Because if we wait to do all of that, once we have the draft plan, I'm concerned about timing. So you may want to go ahead and look at that and identify that for staff so we can be thinking about it.
You need that by.
Well,
Yesterday.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the suspense is good. Need it by mid-June or like our second meeting, or you need it before.
We may
I
need
mean,
that
I'd
July
like to have
meeting,
it by the first meeting in June.
12th of June.
That gives what, 2 weeks? 3 weeks. And but I know some of the time we'll be focusing on the zoning applications. But yeah, I mean, the sooner the sooner the better.
Well, and the other thing about the zoning applications, so right now we have 20-some, low 20s in for Region 4. Zoning applications are like college compositions. They get done at the last minute, okay? So just because we have 23 right now, honestly, you guys could end up with 50 or 60.
That's what I'm
You've
thinking.
asked for a lot of, you've said we want to give these guys the time because they've taken the time to apply. I can't stress enough that when we send information out to you, please do your homework, review it, get familiar. Because we're gonna have a lot of work to get through. We are not getting this number of applications for 2 or 7. You guys are special. I mean, you're a big region, but there's just a lot of people applying, it seems like.
And if you have a question on an application and you want like more information, feel free to reach out to staff. But also keep in mind that like we can't give you all of the specifics right now. So like Anne was asking, do they know that they can have a church in a C1? Potentially, but that potentially doesn't matter to them. We have what they've given us and that's what we were tasked with reviewing.
And I'm sure that this will be public information. So we can go out to other organizations like Broadnet Council, so, and suggest that they look at some of this, correct?
Ultimately, the SAC is gonna be able to, making the final decision. There will be opportunity for the public to review what applications came in, comment on the final plan. But to get to the final plan draft, it's the SAC's responsibility. So
Will it be posted anywhere that what the applications are? Because that's what was happening last time we did it, and it was good, because they posted all the applications online.
my understanding it will be.
Yes, during the next public review, which we anticipate to be between end of July through August, that will, there'll be.
But I just think it would be good if we could make sure community groups know when that's available.
Yeah, it's on the, I don't know, if it's on the one they're getting there.
I don't think so. But yeah, the public is gonna have an opportunity to look at all the applications. And one thing too, as Christina mentioned, it's really important for you guys to do your homework, so I'm gonna send an email to y'all, give you a couple of days, and I'm gonna send you an email every day until y'all do it. Once I finish it, I'll take you off that email chain. Until then, I'm out, get through the gates, you get 3 days of keep quiet, but other than that.
We can have other people email us.
There you go.
I'm happy to do that.
There you go, so I will be,
So if we already have 20 some. And there's obviously still time to bring more in, are you gonna do like the first chunk that you already have now and then do another? Survey monkey afterwards, so we can not have to wait for all of them to be in?
Well, we tried that tonight. That didn't, we didn't have a survey. Yeah, we don't have a survey monkey yet. We gave you some easy ones tonight. We're gonna have to see how it goes, and we're gonna have to look at the volume. And quite frankly, you may not get through it in 2 meetings.
I would be
depends on how
surprised.
much discussion you're gonna have. So we may have to add meetings.
Is there a way we can start looking at them even before they're put into a survey monkey, the one that we already have?
yeah, staff is kind of finalizing that right now, so that we can figure something out.
Okay. Okay,
But
I just think the earlier we can get in a way to start looking, even if it's not the survey monkey part of it, it's just let us read through some of the information to kind of get ourselves familiar with it. Will help us do the process faster.
Yeah,
I agree
I
wholeheartedly.
agree. Yes, the more we can get ahead of time.
Kevin,
Just for my clarification, everybody else's. The survey monkey will kind of have like a final question for each property that says, are you in agreement with the applicant? Like, do you support the application or do you want the application, or however you guys want to word that, but will there be a question like that for each property?
It's
so,
gonna be if you agree with the staff recommendation.
Okay, so that's
Okay,
good. So then when we come here, if a property is at 80% in agreement with the, or, whatever the majority is, then we can hopefully just have to do that.
yeah, and even if a property comes in at 100%, we still, as a group, have to vote on it.
Right.
Okay. Lot going on.
So that's all I had, Ann, so if you wanna,
Well,
oh, one more question, the June 12th meeting, I'm here, we're limited for 2 hours. Do you intend on having that as a longer meeting?
that we have to be out by 8.
Oh, you have to, as there as well,
Yeah, so,
okay.
What, the 26th, that we could be there till midnight.
I mean,
All right,
wow.
we could always move the June 12th meeting to the OPB headquarters, and then we could have the room from like 6 to 9, say.
I
So,
think, I think we do need some more time than the just 2 hours, 2 hours.
so is everybody comfortable going to the Riva office at 2664 Riva Road for a meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so then, what we may do then is have both of these locations, pending availability, be at the Riva Road office, and we'll give you the information for all that. via email.
I think,
Yeah.
when you get down to the real.
I'm gonna have a couple more meetings together too, so.
But,
The public.
Do you want to do
oh,
public
yes,
comment?
yeah, sure. We have a few more minutes, well, we might as well do it. Public comment, this is usually, we've got a little late for that.
I submitted a zoning application with an email address, and I didn't receive any you received a confirmation email saying it had been submitted. It said it was submitted on the website. I put a picture on the screen, but it didn't send an email confirmation saying that the application, but it didn't say that it was gonna do that, but I'm not sure if it's, what's the address or not, 8147, or up this to 8140, All Neck Road.
Yeah, we have it.
Yeah.
You have it? Okay. You submitted them a couple days ago, or, about late last week, I think, Saturday. Yeah, so yeah, okay. But you don't get a confirmation. No, that's, okay, I wasn't sure because it had a submitter email, so thank you for it.
Pat? Question? Just a comment. I support what Reed said, I was waiting for from the council in that, consideration for putting a development in that property near Route 50. And the developer was very close to making a final decision to go with it. And after we did the environmental, particularly the headwaters of America and that's the wildest. Very bad, probably. And then secondly, one of the questions that I'm asked the most, if I can't answer it, is every meeting I'm at, we're talking about affordable housing. What about the search for empty buildings? There's so many empty buildings, for example, like parole. You've got that Sears complex, you have so many empty buildings, and we talk so much about reconstruction. And I know, I had been to a couple of meetings, but I haven't heard much about reconstruction. And why can't we make affordable housing into, you're right in the middle of a shopping area, it's right nearby, and transit comes, it could be near these areas. Why don't we look more at the affordable housing?
Yeah, I think, aren't those some of our included? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, I mean, I think as the SAC, we have made a strong effort to look at those places, and in some areas, we've looked at switching commercial zoning to an MXD or something like that, that would allow a residential component.
You have to speak up a little bit.
Sorry, I was just saying, I think as an SAC, we've made a strong effort to look at situations like you're talking about and make zoning recommendations that would allow for redevelopment for housing and things of that nature.
Makes sense.
My name is Elizabeth Rosberg, and I was on the Plan 2040 committee and worked very closely with all. So I want you all to say thank you. Thank you for your time, your commitment, for volunteering. This is tough. It is not easy. I also encourage you to utilize the staff. They are welcome questions. Make sure you know the difference between land use and zoning. And there's a lot that it goes into it. There's a lot behind the scenes. Please email them. It takes a long time. We had all these local applications originally. You all are going to get these local applications first. They're not public. You will rule on them and then they become public. So zoning. See, I made the first mistake right there.
I was thinking we have Lucas.
I don't know. Go back to before, so you all will see them first. There is some confidentiality into this too. So please be aware of that as well,
They're public
because they are not published.
Yeah,
You
they're
will
gonna
get
be out.
them first,
They're gonna be out.
then they will go. So,
But we're gonna redact personal information.
Oh, sure.
off them. They're not gonna have, everybody's cell phone number. Why are you asking for support? No, we're not.
I encourage y'all to do your homework, please, because you're gonna make a difference. And we appreciate the difference that you're making.
Thank you. Also, I highly encourage you, once our plan goes to planning advisory board, to come and continue to support us. Elizabeth Rosberg is on the planning advisory board. She'd love to see your beautiful faces there.
Yeah, we need a lot of people. Blake, did you have something?
Okay, first, a big shout out to Eric and Jessica who came to the Riviera Beach Library, sat there from 10 to 6, and were as gentle, and helpful to people who were as lost as a ball in tall weeds, including myself, in explaining how things work. And that was really dedicated work.
Yeah, I think that was.
And on that note, thanks for being there waiting for us. I think people behind you.
Early, but we were right on time. No big deal.
We blame the traffic, is that acceptable? But no, and thank you for Amy and John and Stephen and showing up and for help coming out. Well,
He's not done yet.
Second of all,
Yeah.
planning on that, as an example, we have a non-conforming use in our neighborhood. Okay, MA2 is a recommendation for planning staff for that rezoning. It's appropriate in that these non-conforming uses, if you're in a business, you can't live with a non. It's right what the planners are doing. They've got to assign some kind of zones with. The problem is you only have 3 to choose from
Yeah,
in commercial zones. And to just elucidate on what John was saying, they all allow bars, restaurants, and banquet halls in a residential community. All 3. So that's problematic, not your problem, not the planner's problem. They only have 3 to choose from. But what they've done, at least in our case, and our neighborhood is supporting it, they've recommended MA2, which is the least intrusive of those 3 zones. So we support the fact that those properties need to get rezoned. It's not fair to the owner to have to operate under.
well, that's a good point of view.
And 3, I would just encourage, so that we have a chance to be able to, send in our comments and comment at the meeting. We'd love to know if another zone is sent in beyond the zoning that is recommended by the planners, so that our neighborhoods can have a chance to have input. So,
And just while everybody's here, it's also important for you to go to the PAB and go to the county council, because amendments can happen.
Right.
And we need to really support our plan, my feeling. So.
good. Well, thank you, and thanks everybody for the hard work too. I mean, that's really.
One more question. What was that? Yeah, down the end of all this address.
266 Riva Road. 4th, second floor. but that means
2664.
Riva Road.
And if the second floor.
Conference. That's a deep room.
Okay, and if you go to our website, aacounty.org/region4, when we get posted, there'll be an agenda posted, it'll have anything. And they'll send out an email. Correct. Correct. If you're on the mailing list, absolutely.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Say aye.
I'm
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.